As the new year begins, we're all going to be reestablishing resolutions, or perhaps establishing new resolutions, or maybe making deals with ourselves that we're going to try to climb Mount Everest or something really cool that I'm probably personally not going to do. And because we're establishing new resolutions, we're trying to come up with methods to help us achieve those goals. And a lot of us will turn to journaling. So let's talk about how to form healthy habits around the habit of journaling. So, what is the value of journaling? Let's start there. This is a question I've been asking since 2020 and my first foray into the world of bullet journaling, or what the pros would call bujo. Let's go back in time. Take a journey with me. I've always kept some type of book for me to jot down what I would call nuisance thoughts, or sometimes those niggling things that are swirling around in the back of my head until I needed to put them somewhere so that they would stop driving me insane. And so I have always found writing as a useful tool to try to resolve some of those things. Sometimes I call that my overactive imagination, or what some professionals would probably call my overactive imagination, but that's not really the point. However, before 2020, I was never consistent with journaling, and it was because I never had a real aim. I hadn't established a why. Whether it was for memory keeper or an idea generator or an emotional outlet, or even if it was to draw up plans for my latest thoughts for my furniture arrangements, since I'm a crazy person who rearranges their furniture every 6 months, because that's what most people do, right? I used a journal to do that, but it was never really focused. There was never an aim, there was never intentionality around it. Until 2020, when I found bullet journaling. Bullet journaling was created by a guy named Ryder Carroll. If you want to know more about that method, I recommend that you defer to his videos and his book, The Bullet Journal Method. So 2020 came, and like many, I was stuck at home, and I was grateful that I got to keep my job. I was very privileged in that. However, working from home was new for me, and so trying to find the balance between work and life was a real challenge. And so, what I wanted to do was establish a way to have a consistent journaling method to keep myself honest, to understand how I was spending time, to make sure that I was cutting myself off from work and life at appropriate times throughout the day, as well as getting some of those niggling thoughts out of my brain and onto paper so that I could focus. Bujo, as the pros call it, enters the scene. So I ordered myself a bullet journal off the interwebs. It arrived, and I decided not to be very fancy about it. I wanted my journal to be simple. I wanted to serve a simple purpose. That purpose was to keep me organized, to make sure I could jot down those niggling thoughts in the back of my mind, to make sure I understood how I was spending my time, and that I knew where all my tasks were, that I had a central source of truth. I didn't have fancy paper, or pens, or washi tapes, or stickers, or whatever. I just had a normal bullet journal, and I followed the very bare bones of that method. And I found that it was incredibly useful. Over time, that bullet journal of mine really started to take a different shape and form. And so I started adding artistic elements and investing in things like cool pens and washi tape and markers and all this stuff. I would even go as far as to paint in my bullet journal, as I'm an artist. But I found that over time, when I tried to combine artistic elements into my bullet journal, it really took away the value of the actual book itself. And so I stopped doing that over the last year and a half. I went back to just the regular format of just normal bullet journaling, no artistic flair whatsoever. And I kept all of my artistic expressions in a sketchbook or a series of sketchbooks on the side. So let's discuss what I've learned over the last decade of jotting down thoughts and the journey from my earliest days of expressing myself through the written word to the moment we arrive at today, an avid journaler. Like most things we want to establish habits around, we have to first ask ourselves, why do we want to build those habits in the first place? Answering the question why needs to be done so in a concise and honest manner. And it has to be your truth. The reason being is because when forming a new habit, we are looking to increase a standard of living, or if you want to put it a different way, we're looking to invest in a new system that's long-term and sustainable, and that hopefully will change our life for the better. Within the context of establishing a new standard or a system, if you want to put it that way, we often want to do things like establish goals. Goals can be a great way to measure whether we're actually successful in implementing that new standard or that new system. However, where often people make a mistake is that we prioritize goal setting over establishing standards or systems that we want to invest in. And at that, we don't invest enough time in understanding why those standards and systems are actually important to us. What feeling does that elicit from you in attempting to do the thing? In this case, journaling. So to apply the hierarchy as an example to kind of straighten out how this actually works in application, if you want to be an avid journaler, the first thing you're going to say is, well, why? Why do I want to be an avid journaler? Well, that answer is going to be different for a lot of different people. But to give you some recommendations or ideas around that, Journaling can keep you focused. It can keep you task oriented. It can help you track time a little bit better. It can act as an emotional dumping ground. It can be a memory keeper. It can be a list keeper. It can be anything you need it to be. But you have to establish what it needs to be for you. And your reasons why have to help you to understand what you're really attempting to gain. Is it that you want less anxiety? Is it that you want to be more organized? Is it that you want the opportunity to further express and understand your own self? I don't know. That's a question for you to answer. The next element in the hierarchical structure I previously mentioned was, how do we establish goals in order to measure the success of implementing that standard or system? Well, that's a good question. There are many ways to do that. Goal setting, though, I'll warn you, this is where a lot of people fall down on the job. Take, for instance, if you're a brand new person to journaling. My recommendation is don't attempt to try to journal daily. Establish a reasonable measurement to determine whether you're successfully implementing that system, especially if you're brand new to the process. So for instance, maybe say, I'll try to journal 3 times a week. Tell yourself, I'm going to schedule time, that's a key. I'm going to schedule time to journal 3 times a week of the 7 days that are in a week. That's pretty good. If you schedule something, aim for 100%, but accept that 80% of doing the scheduled thing is still actually very successful. In other words, don't let perfectionism be the thing that tears you down here. It's okay to schedule 100% and only achieve 80%. There are going to be times you accomplish less than 80%. There are going to be times that you accomplish 100% of that scheduled time, and there will be times that you accomplish 80%. And that's okay. Because I'll tell you, journaling once a week is better than not journaling at all. Journaling twice a week is better than 1 time a week. 3 times a week, better than 2 times a week, so on and so forth. When you can establish these data points, these pieces of evidence that you're actually capable of maintaining and doing a thing, you'll be able to prove to yourself that you are in fact capable of doing the thing. And so it will compound upon itself, allowing you to better form that habit over time and do it even more consistently than you did to begin with. Something else we have to do when we establish goals to measure the success of implementing a new system or standard is making sure we're reevaluating our approach, our whys, and our hows. Let's say over the course of 6 months, we haven't seen ourselves do the thing very consistently, whatever the thing is, in this case, journaling. Well, you're going to want to sit down and understand, what's the holdup? What's the typical blocker? Is it that you're not scheduling enough time? Is it the environment that you're trying to do the journaling in? Is it the tools and the mechanisms that you're trying to put into place? Are they too complex? Are they too simplistic? Are they just right? Maybe you're not finding a lot of joy in the way that you're doing journaling, so you need to evaluate the type of journaling that you're doing. It's all up to you how you want to shape that, but ultimately you're going to want to make sure you're establishing check-in points to see whether, now that you've attempted to establish this consistent habit, is it consistent? Are you gaining from it what you initially anticipated you would gain? And are there areas for improvement? If so, what are they? So you might be wondering, well, is Bujo right for me? Only you can answer that question. Again, you have to determine your whys. For me, Bujo worked great. And today, I actually transitioned that same mechanism around how to Bujo, and I transitioned it to what they call a Hobonichi journal. The only difference there really being that the journal itself is filled out for me. It already is formatted, so I don't have to set up my own spreads. It's just done for me. But the method of bullet journaling and the habits that I learned from doing standard bullet journaling are now transitioning into this new book. You may find that over the years to come, as you form this habit similar to myself, that old methods kind of get boring or they don't satisfy you anymore. So you have to change the system. You have to change the standard. That's okay. In fact, that's a sign of really good progress. So let's talk about that concept. This idea that you should start small and build up to something bigger. Over time, again, I have to stress you really need to evaluate your success in implementing that new standard and system and really take a look at the goals that you've established to determine, are they really achievable? If they are, is it time to increase those goals? And am I still motivated? You may find that you have to reinvigorate your system, much like I did, by implementing a new book at this point. A new method of jotting down ideas. Maybe Bujo isn't the method, or maybe a modified method of Bujo is appropriate for you now. Or maybe you need to implement more long-form journaling and less of the task tracking, or maybe it's a combination of both. Who knows? Again, this is all customizable to you and what you need. So, how do you get to a point where you can journal daily? We've established that in order to implement a new standard or a new system, we have to establish realistic goals to measure the success of that implementation. So, let's say we do have established realistic goals, we are seeing consistency in the method. In theory, you should be able to compound upon that. So, let's say you start with 3 times a week. Great. Up the ante, get up to 4 times a week, so on and so forth. Over time, as you continue to up the ante and you continue to challenge yourself, reinvigorating your system along the way and ensuring you're reevaluating progress as you make progress and really making sure you focus on your whys, the things that really drive you to maintain that habit, the feelings that you can elicit, the type of organization that you can implement into your life, or whatever your why is, however that's established. Ideally, hopefully you'll get to a point where you're journaling either daily or every other day or whatever your final goal is. What are some of the long-term benefits of journaling? Well, it depends on the type of journaling and what you're meaning to gain from it. It's all dependent on you. But for the sake of reference, why don't I just share some of the things that I've gained? I find that I'm able to focus a lot more. I'm a lot more self-aware. I'm a lot less stressed out. I'm also much more aware of things like how I spend my time. How much doom scrolling am I doing versus productive activity or healthy activity doesn't necessarily have to be productive. This is something we also fall into when it comes to things like journaling, is that we feel like it needs to be a productive exercise. Sometimes you can go into your journal and just doodle. The idea is that your journal needs to be a safe place that you can go to and truly express what you're thinking, and how you're processing in that moment, however you choose to use that journal in whatever method you want to use it. For me, I gain a lot from both long form journaling, task tracking, and scheduling. The journal that I'm using is called a Hobonichi Cousin. It's the English version in A5 size. I find that this journal can be all the things that I need it to be. It's a planner, it's a memory keeper, it's a task tracker. If you want a little bit more information about how I'm using my journal, I'm happy to make another video about the actual Hobonichi itself. I'm also happy to make a video to show you how I've used bullet journals in the past. Again, I'm not going to prescribe what type of journal is best for you, or even the type of journaling method that's best for you. It comes back to what your purpose in journaling is. All I can tell you is what I've learned from the process, and hopefully you can find that useful. As my last and most important piece of advice through all of this is that any habit building that you're attempting to do through 2025 is hard. Whether it's as simple as, I just want to build a journaling habit, or maybe you want to climb Mount Everest. I don't know. At the end of the day, any habit that you have to develop in order to reach a specific, sustainable system or standard of life is going to be really, really challenging. So be kind to yourself and remember to take off small chunks at first and build upon those small chunks over time. Allow your success doing it at first in small amounts to compound upon itself by acting as evidence that you are capable of establishing a regular routine. Throughout 2025, I hope you achieve all of your goals, or at least most of them. I'm probably only going to achieve some of them, if I'm being brutally honest, but that's okay, because I'll schedule 100%, aim for 100%, and accept that maybe I'll only ever reach 80% of it. If you want more information about how I journal, leave a comment below and like this video. Thanks for watching.